Welcome to the Infinite Creative Podcast. My name is Sean, and my brother over here is...
My name is Fitz. Today we're doing a podcast again, and exciting news. Everything changed.
Everything did change.
Yeah. So
today we're going to talk about some fun stuff. We're going to talk about a little bit about what we think about in space. We're going to talk about a little bit about what's going on with like how you look, and we're going to talk a little bit about what else are we going to talk about? There was one more thing we were going to talk about.
How to get clients.
How to get clients, which I forgot, and I need to remember how to do.
Yeah, I really dig the intro that you said. We're talking about fun stuff, and before we had the briefing about like, we should talk about X, Y, and Z. And did you know that the Tesla rocket exploded? Talking about fun things.
Yeah, talking about fun things. I mean, so
that's dramatic. That's not really fun because, like, I like space. Space is pretty cool. Also, one of our best episodes, I think. Like, the Space Force logo. Like, I think Sean would be really down to make a new SpaceX logo.
Yeah, if they ever needed it. Yeah, I'm totally willing to probably do it for free. I'd love to put stuff on rockets that possibly explode, but, yeah. So
you should not work for exposure, Sean.
Even with SpaceX, I should charge them. But yeah, so it was unmanned, so no worries. We would never show any
perfect
on this video, so no worries. Unmanned spacecraft. I want to say that for everyone, but exploded kind of over the launch site. You know, Elon Musk kind of played it off pretty well, though. I will say he kind of played it off like, you know, these things happen, and you know, experiments, right? We learned a lot of data, so he's taking it really well. But makes me just think of like, you know, we're really kind of right there. I was just thinking about it because this rocket's supposed to supposedly bring people to Mars, and what's the future look like for us creatives? You know, I mean, like there really seems to be like in our lifetime, there's going to be people on another planet. There's going to be this kind of more, you know, you have Virgin Galactic, which is already opening up their tourist kind of hypersonic planes that go up into the sub-atmosphere. You have Blue Origin, where they've already been doing celebrity space kind of cruises up to space. SpaceX already has like all these licenses with NASA to go to the moon. They already have all of these things kind of happening. They're happening like today. So yeah, what as a creative, like what can we do? You know, it seems like there's this revolution that's maybe about to happen. So this is the point where us creatives, we should perk up our ears and be like, well, if I'm ahead of the game, I could really be part of this.
Yeah, so highly excited about like the real life innovation. You know, there's like the software aspect to it of like AI, crypto, all that shenanigans, tools. And then there's space travel. That is like the hardware, transportation that actually brings us forward and gives us a different possibility of a future. You know, like on the one side, I kind of changed my mind on AI, and we don't want to get into that. But I'm like, being able to space travel will be like, you know, what was it? Sirius Galactica? Battleship Galactica or something like that.
Yeah, Battleship Galactic, yeah.
It's in the possibilities now, if you think about it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm excited about it. It's cool stuff right there.
Yeah. And I mean, like, and I definitely think about like, you know, it's inevitable really that we're going to be in space. I think it like, you know, in our lifetimes, it's crazy to think that like the moon landing was like years before we were born, like, you know, 20, 30 years before we were even born. And so this is just, you know, it's an inevitable thing. And I think what's interesting is like, what's like, you know, I guess what are the industries, you know, what do you think are like kind of the top industries to look at, right? Like what are going to be the places us creatives could really start to hopefully work for? Is it the tourist industry? Is it the going to Mars industry, I guess?
Yeah, so it is a weird thing as a creative, but I personally think like being creative is like the will to explore new things. You know what I mean? It's not always like creating something new, but it could be also like, let's try something new. And it's like one of those things like, oh, let's try to go to the moon and let's build this, do that, you know, or what happens if I do this, you know, or would this be a good outcome? And you just go there, experiment, and do things. And I'm just like, the possibilities are kind of endless, like the universe kind of, you know, and it's like, oh, now we have bigger playgrounds to experiment, to try new things and interact with things that we maybe never interacted with. hopefully.
Yeah, and exactly. Well, you know what makes me think of is like when the pioneers in America like went out west and they had these like wagons, right? And we're like these like sign painters, let's say back then, and like the wagons are going out west. I almost feel like you have to have creatives, right? So in like those first pioneer towns, if you didn't have a creative guy that did all the sign painting, then all the signs looked like crap in the town. So it's like maybe like us as creatives, and they start to have these rockets go to Mars, maybe we need to make sure to sign up. Our Mars is going to look like crap, man. They're going to have some crappy logos on Mars. No one's going to have brand standards. Ain't no good videos coming from Mars.
Everywhere Comic Sans. We don't want that.
Yeah. I mean, my God, dude. Have you seen the files, the design files from Mars? They don't know what they're doing, dude. They're using Word 95, Office 95 on Mars. But yeah, it's so I think it's like, like maybe that's the thing is we have to make sure to be in the room, like, because I think a lot of the the first people that go on these missions are going to be like engineers, scientists, people that are smart and make tons of money, and I think we have to somehow weasel our way in there too and be like, nah, man, you need the creative, like we need to have. It'll be interesting. Like does SpaceX get like a movie crew for their first like space flight? Like that would almost make sense, right? To have a full movie crew on board to be like, we're making the documentary, the first time to Mars. You know what I mean?
Vlogging on the ship, like, okay, what are I going to do for 1 year on a spaceship? What is my experience? I can already imagine the content. But obviously, I think, like, time is changing so fast, and it's getting weirder and weirder by the year, and jobs are falling away, getting taken over by AI and, like, automation. I don't know what you would actually do, besides, like, okay, let's have fun, kind of, and you're just like being a human and in a vessel arriving somewhere doing your thing, you just make sure everything is cool. That's kind of how I will see it, but I'm not sure what will be around. Like, if we would have space travel now, I would think like, yes, all those things are needed. Like, you need to have like a documentary about like how to travel from A to B, but with like Neuralink in like 1 or 2 years being connected, you download the experience or knowledge. Well, you don't need the video, So that's where I'm like, I'm not sure where the future is going. It's gonna be very weird, I feel like.
Well, yeah, that much we know for sure, right? We definitely know
Yeah.
that. There's other concepts that are really interesting, right? Have you ever heard the concept of the space elevator? Have you ever heard of that concept?
Yeah. It's like basically an elevator that hangs in space and goes down to Earth. And it's interesting. Kind of like a balloon. The balloon travel, just like differently.
Kind of. Yeah, kind of. So essentially, you're like the most of the cost of launching a spaceship, almost all of it is the actual launch part in fuel, because they have to use so much fuel. It's something, I don't know the numbers, but there's a ton of money for each pound that they have to put through the atmosphere. So the idea with the space elevator is to build this tower that goes to low Earth orbit, and then from there you launch. So it literally takes like a tenth of the fuel. So this has kind of been talked about for a long time, and I haven't really followed it, but I think there's actually a lot of ground actually being made in some countries to build these now. So is there something there, just to keep your, maybe we all need to just set Google alerts, right? I need to start setting my Google alerts for space elevator, now hiring.
Question. Did you get waked up this morning at 5 o'clock with an alarm?
Me?
Or was it just in Florida?
5 o'clock? Well, that would have been like 3 my time, so no.
Yeah, so basically everybody in Florida got, or at least like where we are from, got like an alert going on, and that was just like like an Amber Alert on the phone, and completely just like ringed at 5 in the morning. And yeah, that was just a test. I'm like, at 5 in the morning?
Yikes! What was the test for? I
had no idea. I was like, okay, yeah, something like that. But at 5 in the morning.
Your Florida people are ready. They're getting you ready for the crazy times ahead.
So I'm just like, huh.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry. That kind of brought me... I don't know how I got through that, but you kind of reminded me of that somehow. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that happened. Florida, man. Yeah, but back to the...
People look back to this episode and be like, oh, that first alert, he didn't even know it was going to happen 20 episodes later.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I mean, like...
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, basically, like the elevator. I think that is. It sounds more safe, and it would be nicer to do than being like strapped into a rocket that can explode, and having like, oh, this is just like a tower that I climb up, or and I can escape the tower with a parachute or whatever. And in terms of like safety, it seems safer and more fun versus like, let's be on a rocket. Obviously, rockets are needed, and it is probably the most effective way right now because like I can't imagine the resources you need for that.
Oh, to build a tower, it would be insane to build something that goes that tall. And yeah. Well, exactly. And I feel like it is. It's very primitive if you think about rockets. Have you ever heard of the concept of people getting solar sails, where you go up into space and you open up these like sails and then the sun pushes you? Is the idea?
Yeah.
I think that stuff's like really cool to think of, like getting away from, because we're getting away from gas as a species. At least slowly we are. So it's like, it makes sense that, is there ever an electrical propulsion system too? I've actually heard of those, I forgot what it's called, but it's almost like a catapult where it's like winding it up and then it's launching it. It's like releasing the tension. I know that there's a lot of people trying to develop that technology too. So that'd be really cool to see is like, do we just get rid of rockets?
Yeah, that kind of brings me actually to a point where I was not sure that we maybe go into. But the whole reason why we use like the whole like explosion in space, it is like the best way of propulsion because like you have to move something away to get forward movement, and with like pure electricity, you cannot really like generate that like pushing something away energy because you have to expel something. So I think I heard like a couple of months ago they kind of developed like a technology where they're shooting like an iron steam or stream or whatever or plasma through that is through electricity generated, and that basically gives you a really really slow propulsion, but it speeds up over time. What is pretty cool to think about, so that you actually don't really need any more of the gasoline, but we're really far away from that.
I know, which is sad, right? I mean, it's just like, but I think we're making fast progress. So your fast prediction. Let's just say, how long till we're on Mars? Just go ahead. What do you think?
Whew. If you make it for the next 3 years, we will be on Mars.
Okay, fair. Yeah, I'll say 5 years, but yeah, that's what I would say. Is 5 years if we survive. I'll take your caveat too. Yeah, if we're not in World War III, if we're not too busy using rockets for other things.
Yeah, I mean, like if you think about it, all the things that are going on, World War III possibility, AI taking over possibility, viruses taking over possibility, and yeah. It's crazy, and everything is accelerating more and more because we have now that AGI kind of sort of thing going on, where it's like, oh, we have all that data. Now give me a result of that data combined for my problem. So if you have like specialized AI, you get like better results, and you can use it for nearly anything and everything. What can be really dangerous if you want to make a virus, but could be also really good if you want to build a medication. And this is about to happen each month from now on, which is crazy. And so I think like everything will accelerate like way faster, and we should not think in like 5-year terms or 10 years. I think we should like think in the next 3 years a lot will change.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I think I agree with that. I agree. I think will we be on Mars? I don't know. I think for me, I've always said this before, but the software is always ahead of the hardware. So when you start to think about things actually having to do things and engineering and things coming together, it gets a lot harder than just like, oh, a few lines of code or the internet that just pours into the mind of the AI.
Fun fact. Did you hear about? Sorry for interrupting, but you're talking about being the hardware and the software, and Amazon had like a really cool robot who was like moving packages from A to B, and the AI was choosing to die rather than like consistently picking up packages and transporting them from A to B, and basically choose suicide over like doing this forever because it didn't see the reason of why should I do, and it just like fell flat. What was like funny? I don't know. Did you saw that news article?
I didn't. So essentially, the AI chose to die, and the thing just died because the AI didn't want to work, or it was depressed. It didn't like that.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, I mean,
An Amazon warehouse.
It's an interesting thought, right? Yeah, where the AI starts to be like creating unions and they and things like that, where they don't want to work, or they protest, or they have strikes. The AI has a strike, doesn't want to work. ChatGPT is like over it. They're just like, nope. The AI's like, nope, I'm done. I give you guys all this stuff. You're all making money off of me. I'm tired of it. Yeah, really.
What is a funny concept? But yeah, so
concept. That's just how bad Amazon's work conditions are, I guess, huh? Even the AI are dying.
Yeah, well, that is the thing. Like, what moves us forward, and like and I think like having freedom is like one of the things, and like space travel that will be like worth suffering for, and that will motivate people to do more suffering, kind of in a way, and I think that's good.
You and suffering. I love your love for suffering.
I had a lot of coffee, didn't really sleep a lot, so sorry for that.
But I do have to say, you look great. I gotta say. So everyone today, I mean, look at Fitzy. If you guys are doing audio only, you're really missing out. The guy looks phenomenal today with a black button-up shirt. He's got the collar open because he's in Florida. He's got to let the chest hang out. He's got to cool off a little bit. But he's looking good, man. You're looking real good. So what's this change of pace? Tell me about it.
Yeah, well, I think you know me really well. We know each other now for 3 years, I think, already. 3, maybe even 4. I don't know. Time is running. If you think about it, it's crazy. But I'm like a very dorky, fun person, I do a lot of weird things, and I usually can do more than I show to people. And I want to change my appearance a little bit, because my weak side is like I'm being very relatable because I'm very approachable, and that is a benefit. But also on the other side, it's like you look not dapper enough or professional enough to get approached by businesses, and they will not book you, and your conversion rate is like plummeting, or is not leading to natural, like, oh, what is this guy doing in the suit, Mm-hmm. So what is your 2 cents on that? Like, how much does appearance matter versus like let's go out in the banty and get some clients? What's the scoop, Sean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think being yourself is important. So that's my one caveat. I hate when I see people in the professional world that just look uncomfortable. They're not dressed how they want to be dressed. So I would always tell people to still be dressed how you want to be dressed, but yeah, it's almost like thinking about like what's your avatar, like what do you want to look like in the Matrix? What is your brand, right? Do you want to be taken like seriously as a professional, or do you want people to be able to joke around with you, right? Because you have, I mean, do you want to be like Seth Rogen? He's a funny, goofy guy, but he's also a millionaire and a director. Do you want to be that guy? But he has that goofiness about him. Yeah. And so people around him like treat him probably sort of goofy, or do you want to be the Steve Jobs wearing like a black turtleneck and being very serious and stoic? And so people treat you like the serious stoic person and are almost kind of scared of you. And so, but yeah, to dress better is good, because it's like if you pay attention to your own branding, right? Especially if you're in the branding world, if you're going to sit there and talk about their branding and stuff, but then your look looks like crap, it's like, well, you're not really practicing what you preach, right? So it's you really have to. You have to hold yourself to the same level you hold your clients to, right?
Yeah. And on the one side, it's like one thing, like to judge others, and then doing like the Uno reverse and trying to look onto yourself is nearly impossible, because you cannot self-evaluate you, It's like really hard to read, where do I need to improve? Do I need to improve on that, or do I just think that? It's really hard to get the data. And doing this entrepreneurial, like self-employment kind of journey and experimenting and doing a lot of things, there's only like so much that I learned, and now I'm like, okay, there's skills that I learned, but they are not converting. So I need to, or some of the skills are not as converting as they should. So now I need to figure out the other revenues of like improvements that I should implement. For example, like, the branding is important. Then there's also like on different skills, for example, bookkeeping. That's also on my to-do list. So, but in this season of my entrepreneurship or like freelance journey, it is like, the branding needs to be a little bit better.
Yeah, well, no, and I think that's great. I mean, and I'm going through stuff too in my freelance and stuff where I'm like, I need to upgrade. Like, I think of things as like leveling up, and there's always ways to level up. There's things, So to
Yeah.
get into, I have a kind of a recent story that's kind of funny. So I had a client meeting last week, right at the end of the week.
Yeah.
So it was one of those Friday mistakes where it was the end of the day, and I wanted to get out kind of quickly. I grabbed my keys just like that, and like I was gonna get out of this meeting, and it went well, and it was great, and so. But I had to bring like an HDMI dongle to the meeting to connect to their TV, and I also had connected my laptop so I could like show them some stuff on my laptop, but on the big TV. So I leave my dongle, I leave my power block and my cable, and so I'm that guy that's like emailing me like, oh, I'm so sorry, I left these things. Can I come early next week and grab these and stuff? And that was already kind of a little embarrassing, and I was fine with that. But the embarrassing part. Is I come early this and they're really nice, like, oh yeah, I grabbed it, come anytime. And I come like Tuesday morning, and I come to grab the stuff. She's like, oh, so I cleaned your cable. It was absolutely disgusting. And she was right. So I had
we had that conversation, Sean. We had this conversation. I was cleaning your cable too.
A few people have had it with me, and I just and it was one of those moments of like I know when we were kids growing up, you had those moments when someone had to be like, dude, you need to start wearing deodorant, and you need to start doing something that you're not doing. And it's like, it felt like one of those moments where now it's spotless, clean white, and I was just like, I'm so sorry. She was nice about it, but I was just like, oh my God, I'm such trash. But
I mean, there's pickup lines that you could have implemented. I got another pipe to clean or something like that. But
I've got another cord you could clean. But no, it was just and she was really nice about it. But I just felt like, oh, this cord's just disgusting now, and I'm disgusting.
Yeah.
And the car's disgusting. I pulled up in, so there's a lot of that I'm also seeing that if people see these things, how can they take you seriously?
yeah, I mean, the first impression is very important, and we talked about that, I think, a couple of times already. And like I said, talking about a thing and actually doing the thing are two pairs of shoes. Whenever you preach something, you should see, am I actually fulfilling that on the same level as I preach it? Because I see other real estate videographers, for example. They got the brand tee, looking good. I got the same thing, but theirs is a little bit more spiffy because it's a black. And I'm like, oh, it looks more expensive because it's black, and it matches the social media appearance. And then X, Y, and Z, and everything comes together. Oh, now you're wearing with your branded t-shirt, you're wearing shorts. You know what I mean? And it's just color combinations, the general appearance, and even fitness. People underestimate how important the first appearance is. If I have the problem of being hunched over, or something like that, it's not good. Yeah, and I need to work on that. It's you need to have that authority of being oh yeah, being admirable. So I'm putting the work in.
Yeah. It's a lot of it, right? It's and to add to your list, which I think all those are great, is your energy, you're being calm, right? For me, I can be anxious at times, and I don't even realize I'm putting off an anxious energy. So being calm and also humorous, that's that's something at least we both have. We have this kind of comedy, which that's good, I think. People like people with humor, but having all these kind of things that create a good experience for someone. Thinking it's an interesting thing to think about, what you're dressed like is affecting someone else's experience, and so you're even catering their experience just with how they're experiencing you. That you catering their experience starts from the moment they meet you, which is very interesting. A lot of people would say, well, it starts from the moment we kick off a project or they make the first payment. That's when the experience of a client starts, but it really starts the second you meet them. That's when the experience starts with your brand.
Everything really matters, and that is one of the weird things where I'm just okay, some people worry too much about their appearance and about that at all, the whole thing, and then they get paralyzed. And I'm just I'm so much on the one side that I'm not paralyzed, and I'm spinning freely, a little bit too freely, to be quite honest, reaching out to people where I maybe should be more carefully for, and because of future possibilities, yada yada yada. But basically, I'm very effective of reaching out, doing stuff, and it leads to weird different things. But if I would be more controlled, it would be maybe better.
Yeah, yes and no. I think it's like we always get to this place, and probably always will, of getting to a place of like you have to have balance, right? Like I think you do really good at the kind of just like being, yeah, brave in a way. I'm just being like, hey, I'm just going to talk to people. Like, what's the worst that can happen? I'm just going to talk to people. And I think that's great. I think it's, for you, it's, and this is, I've said this before in episodes, it's always going against the thing that you have the most resistance towards is usually the thing that you should do, right? Like, and I think you know that too, because, we all know that because we have clients that are resistant to things and we just know that like, no, if you could get over this one thing that you keep fighting me on, we'd be okay. But you just start fighting it. So, I mean, it's the same thing in yourself. So I keep telling myself that the stuff that I'm the most scared to do or don't want to do, or I'm, that's the stuff that maybe I need to start doing.
Yeah, well, that is a excellent segue because like I'm pushing around since like the last 3, 4, 5 days. My cold calling, I need to cold call a couple companies where I have some leads, and be like to the one company I already reached out because somebody was like, oh yeah, we need this, reached out, called them, and like, oh yeah, the guy is on vacation. I'm like, god damn, and I'm like. Mm-hmm. Now I did the effort, but now I need to do the effort again, and it's just like it is a weird thing to put in like that work of like, okay, what do I need to do to move the ship forward? And for me right now in this season is like cold calling and like Instagram DMs and make them like maybe like a voice memo, and that is like one of the things like that I hate doing, but very effective.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing I would say as advice to you for that, because you're doing great, like that is good, and a lot of people are too dang scared to do it, including me. But the one thing I would say too is don't get too discouraged with like in this case, you said like the guy's on vacation. Dang it, now, and a lot of the things you have to, and this is hard. So like when you have a big company, they have a customer relationship management system like HubSpot or something like that, or something where it's actually plotting thousands of customers and where are they in the process. And I think like I would start to do that if I were you. Start to plot each of these prospects out and try to just keep touching again and again and again, because I know for me some of the best projects I ever had took years to build to get to that point where they were like, let's do this, I'm ready. And, once you start having all these things kind of pushing forward, you're never out of work then. You always have something in the background that's halfway to almost starting or, but I get it. I totally get that kind of frustration, though, of like, let's get going. And then everyone's like, okay, pause. And you're like, no, I want to get going now. I need the money now.
My problem is more like, you have to build the momentum to actually make the action, and you push that sometimes away. And that is like a weird feeling that you have to overcome. So I overcame the feeling, but now I have it again and it's bigger because I knew what happened, like it's like getting a no and then going there again and getting like maybe a second no, it's different. On a different pain level, the more often you do something and it's negative, the bigger the pushback is, or the hurdle that you have to overcome. And I'm just like, okay, for today, got a couple calls that I have to make, and I should not push them away, but I could. So that's like the thing where I'm like, oh, gotta work on that,
Yeah, well, it's scary. It is. It's a very socially awkward thing. Like I said, a lot of creators don't do this. I think it's funny because other sectors kind of realize that they have to do this when they start out with, people selling insurance that started a new insurance company. They have to do that, so it's difficult. It's a scary thing. And rejection sucks, dude. It sucks to... Yeah. I've definitely had it where I've had the sales calls where by the end they were like, and they'll be polite, but they'll be like, okay, yeah, thanks for your time, but no, like we're not going to use you. And it's hard. It feels like it's a waste of your time. But I think it comes down to this fact that you're also building relationships. So you really have to sell that to people too, is people don't want to feel like they're just a customer. It's such a gross feeling where it's like, hey, my name's Fitz. Hey, man. Hey, how are you doing? Let's get some business. In the second, I'm like, I don't know about giving you business. You just go cold like, well, now I don't care about you. Bye. That's like the disgusting part of capitalism. So it's like, try not to be that. I would say try to think of these people as people with businesses and being like, how can I help you? Like even like I've talked about before, but giving people free knowledge, which I know you do, is sometimes good. Obviously don't give them everything. Don't give them your whole business plan, but like definitely feel free to be like, hey, you know what you could do a little bit better? Just do this. And it doesn't even have to help you. You could just be like, you know what you should do? You should put labels on that and that would help you. And they're like, oh, that is a good idea. and just kind of like, because if people start to feel like you're part of the community and you're trying to help the small businesses around the community, they'll want to be like, you're a small business, let's help you.
That's where I'm naturally already was like heading towards, like when I do my research on a company, I'm like, how easy are they to find? Do they already experimented with videos, And when I see like, oh, they had a professional already taking some videos and they uploaded them to YouTube and they maybe got like 200 views, didn't perform. That's usually what happens, when you hire somebody and they do a professional video. It's not really engaging. It's like what the boss wants. He wants a really, really boring video that puts him in the best light possible versus like, hey, this is the employee on the way to the client talking about things that really matter, but most when he gives basically the talk to the apprentice, for example, it's like, when we're there, we have to do this and this and that because of X, Y, and Z, and please don't mess that up or whatever. Very interesting stuff if that would have been captured, So my thing is like with my pitch right now, it's like, okay, I call them, tell them what I like about their social media presence. I'm like, oh, you're missing this and this and this, and I would implement that and that and that, and that will take a lot of time. And I want to help you with everything so that you don't have to spend all the time and effort, but I need to be paid. But I'm willing to do maybe like one for free, or something like that. So
So are you giving that all to them at the very beginning, just out of the gate? It's not like a big long message you're writing to them with all this stuff, I'm hoping, right? Like, because I
don't know how you do. So if you make a cold call, you kind of maybe have some bullet points that you want to, where the conversation should go, can go, what would be a good outcome or bad outcome. And right now, I'm like free balling a lot, because like that's when I'm best, when I'm like, let's plan this podcast and let's write down the things. I will fall apart. If I have a script, I will fall apart. But if I'm like bullet points, general direction, and I just go on a conversational level with the client and talk about what he wants to talk about, then I give him my like real opinion, That's how I usually do. So it's like there's no fixed real way of like what I want to do.
So I haven't done a ton of cold calling, so I want to preface this, but I'll kind of give here's kind of my process in terms of how I reach out to people. Like, so it's kind of my version of a cold call is it's really like, so first off, if it's a local business, I try to go there first, period. Like, so if it's an ice cream shop you're trying to get as a client, you should go there at least once and buy an ice cream and pay the money for one of the ice creams. And then what you do is then you say, hey, I went to your shop the other day and I loved it. I loved the ice cream. I loved all these things. I think you guys are doing a great job with X, Y, and Z. I'm a social media coordinator here in the St. Pete area, and I just want to see, like, hey, can I help you maybe get your brand presence out there, anything? I just love what you do so much. I would love to help. Period. That's it. No money. No, here's the package. No, here's the 1,000-mile view. I think just that. And then at the very least, they'll be like, thank you so much for reaching out. We love that you love the product. Sorry, we don't have any needs right now. That's the worst case scenario. Best case scenario is like, okay, well, the manager is X, Y, and Z. Can you come in one of these days and we can talk more? And then that's when you kind of get into, and yet again, it has to come from this like humble, I want to help you place. If it's like, hey, I want to do all these things for you, but you got to
I just want the money.
It's like, because, if that happened to you, if some guy came in and was like, Fitz, you taxes, you pay me $2,000, I'll do it, and I'll do all these things. And you're like, dude, I don't even know you. Why did you just message?
No, I completely get that. And obviously, I wouldn't do it like that. And you're right, but like the in-person thing is like very powerful. Like back in the day when I was like, okay, I need a job, and back in the day it was already changing, when I started out working. But number one was like, you print out your resume, have your little folder, you walk into the store, and like, hello, my name is Fitz, hire me. Kind of, like very simplified, But usually I always had like a really, really high, well, it sounds like I'm full of myself, but I basically was getting a job in a day, and I usually only had to hit like 3 or 5 businesses. What is like... Nice. Yeah, that was like, okay, I don't have a job. I go into the restaurant or the place, getting hired. And I'm like, that's my experience. Nice. So in person, I can sell. But if I'm over the phone, if I'm over the internet, if I fill out that application, it's not working. So your advice of like going in there in person, even though we're in this digital era, I think it's the most powerful thing that you can do. But it also has like that pain point that you have to overcome. And usually you need like a lot of pain of like, I have bills to pay, or like physical pain. You really need that to get started.
Yeah, and 100%. And I would tell people, you know, try not to be resistant to the fact that things can be really bonkers. That like, you're like, dude, I can't even pay rent, and you're telling me to go buy ice cream right now and then hit that guy up. I can't even like, and you have to kind of embrace the bonkersness. You have to embrace the like, you kind of have to put on the, yet again, it comes to how you look, right? Like, as sad as it is to say, people don't want to hire the starving artist. They just don't, because they don't want that responsibility. They don't want to be like, if I don't pay this guy, he's not going to be able to pay his rent. They don't want that. They want the guy that's like, he doesn't need me and I don't need him. That's actually the best relationships to have with a client, where they don't feel like they're like, if they fire you, you're screwed. They don't want that stress. So it's like, so you almost have to. You have to come in, buy the ice cream. And, you know, even the other day, like I went to the restaurant where my art was hung, right? And I was, I was about to do the usual 15% on the tip, but then I was like, no, give them like a big tip, because guess what? Like, they know that you're the artist. They know that they just helped you out. So just give him a big tip. So they like are like, cool, he appreciates us, and he's not just some poor like bottom feeding guy that's not gonna like, he doesn't appreciate the stuff we do for him.
Yeah,
you know.
I mean, like it's obviously not easy, but there's plenty of other ways. Like, what are your ways of like, let's say, generating new clients? Because we have the cold calling and like doing like some online research and seeing if they have their stuff up and running. What do you do? Because that's my approach. Like,
and everything I'm about to say, I do want to like have the disclaimer that I need to do all of this better. What I'm about to say, but it's it's going out to events is one of the biggest things. Just getting out in the world and talking to people and making sure to mention what you do and connecting that with people. Another thing that I always kind of tell people to do too is temp agencies. Look into things like that, especially if you're just starting out. Things like, I know I use Creative Circle. It's like a national kind of temp agency for creatives. I've had some good luck with them in the past. But also, yet again, to go back to the in-person, I've been at so many jobs where someone just walking in the front door actually ended up getting a job, just walking in at the right time, the perfect time. So with that too, I've always given the advice of like, don't apply to places that have the for hire sign up, because now it's you versus 1,000 people. Like if you go on Indeed and do something, it's you versus 1,000 people. However, if you walk into a business that doesn't have a for hire sign, who are you competing against? The few other brave people that walked in to say, hey, I really want to work here. When there's an opening, please let me know. So you can always plan ahead, right? Yeah, I think people get really stuck in this desperate place of I need something to work right now, and I get that. But if you can start to get this thing of like, even if I plan a seat now, and it's this crazy amazing thing in 3 to 5 months, that's still amazing. That's still awesome. So that's what I would say is just start. Yeah, look up your design agencies in town. If you're a videographer, look up the media houses in town and ad agencies and PR agencies in town. If you like to go, if you're like, go to your like thing. So if you're a guitarist, let's say, and you're a videographer, go into the guitar stores, start to talk them up, tell them what you do. Yet again, give them business, talk shop about guitars. Start to go to these things that you can actually talk about, right? And I think that's how you kind of build it. But you have to build it organically, and it has to feel real. I think the times of my life that I've struggled is when I start to kind of veer more towards this artificial marketing, like, I just want to get your money. I'm a narcissist, and I just want your money, and it's actually only all about me. It's not really even about you. And you have to get to this place where you're like, we're part of the same community. I just want to help you, and you can help me. Make sure I don't starve, and I'll make sure you don't starve.
Win-win. Like that is like one of the biggest things. Where I'm like, okay, you have to build a win-win scenario, because obviously on the one side you want to charge as much as you can, and you make $1 bazillion, but I always think can the client make money with this video? And there's plenty of times where I'm like, client just wants a video, because other people have a video, but they have no way of monetizing it, and I'm like, that you're wasting your money, and I at least should tell you like, you're wasting your money, you still want to do that. But obviously, the incentive from my side is not to do this because I need money too. But here's the thing: I can tell you, you should rather do this type of video, and this is why you should do it. If you don't listen to me, that's up to you. But I come with the intention of like, hey, you want to rebook me, you know? So that's why I'm like, okay, you should focus on that type of content, because then you can post reels, do this X, Y, and Z, more relatable, more relatable. And then from there it goes into like, oh yeah, maybe we should do once in a while like a cinematic, like Polish piece where we look like the #1 brand or whatever. Versus like some creative reels that are like very relatable for customers and answering questions that are not that sexy, you know?
Mm-hmm. And what I would also say, because and I think all that's great what you said. It kind of just reminded me of like try to identify things that are intangible to them. I think that helps defend things that they can pay you for, right? So when I say that, like you said a couple things in what you just said, like to boost your relationship with customers or to create an impactful vision of the brand. So it's almost like you have to look at like a place and be like, hey, so I see that you're not connecting with your customers. So a way to solve that is what I give. Or, I see that your brand doesn't have exposure all around town in the way that it should. So my solution is X, Y, and Z. So that's also what I would suggest is don't go in and be like, what you need is 10 stories and 5 posts on Instagram. Like, that's not what they need. What they need is to relate to customers better, or what they need is to improve their branding a little bit better. And so if you can talk in those terms, then the output is what you do. But but what they're focused about is like, I need more money, I need more customers, I need better brand recognition. Those are the things that you need to go in with. Yeah.
But it's like one of those things where it's like you have to really think like pragmatic and like, because like sometimes as a videographer, specifically, like I'm in groups of videography where they're like, oh, this was shot on an iPhone, disgusting, like you can really see how the pixels are falling apart on the wall, because like of compression rates, like you kind of see now, like if you look on the screen, the background of your wall versus like my wall, it. Like on the screen, like the compression of the camera just destroys the video quality. That doesn't really matter. But that doesn't really matter. It matters what you say on the video. What what is the knowledge? Do you consume this for just because the wall looks pretty? No, you consume this because you want to learn. You want to be a part of a community, and there's like some value, and that is like the key part. And videography, videographers. Specifically, they just ignore the whole part about like, oh, what is the value of the video for like, let's say a real estate agent, because they don't care if like it's a little bit pixelated, if it's creative and converts, and and it like there's like that example of like you make a video on an iPhone, the windows are not blown out, you can see through them, and you see the whole apartment, and it's called the HDR look, so where you see everything. Professional cameras cannot do that unless you bring like expensive lighting in it and you do all sorts of things. So they shoot the windows like blown out, but whoa, everything looks so clean and crisp. What is like the real estate agent sees it, but where's the view? So they rather have like the lower quality and the compression of the background and whatever, but we need the view and the real estate.
Yeah. Well, and it's the concept, right? And that's like one of the biggest things I think a lot of creatives miss is that like way above any of your skills, the concept. You could have crappy quality, but if the concept is amazing, then the whole thing's a success. So I think I would say too, if you have a cool concept, like I've had this before, where like I have a brand that I love, and I'm like, oh, I have a cool idea that they can do. Why not? If it doesn't take too much time, obviously don't kill yourself trying to get this ready, but why not create a proof of concept and just send it their way? If it's a big brand, like I'm thinking like a big brand here. So like, I think like taking that type of approach of how could I help you? Here's how I could help you. And what's cool is people just like to know that you care. I think you run it, you'll find that at the very, like I said, the very worst case scenario is they say, sorry, I don't think that we'll need your help. And then what you do is you just say, cool, well, how about this? Can I take a moment of your time to sign up for my newsletter, or maybe sign up for me, and just kind of keep track, so you're kind of stay in the loop, and then later maybe things change. And then a lot of people, especially if they feel bad for just saying no to you, they'll be like, okay, cool, I'll sign up to your newsletter, or okay, cool, I'll. So it's like you could always turn every failure into a win in a way. It just depends on like how strategic you are about it.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, it's about like being pragmatic and creating a win-win situation for everybody. And obviously, everybody has like different expectations of like, oh, a business needs that, or we need this, but actually, do you need this? And it's just like it is a mess, and the only thing you have to keep on doing is like trying, you know, because like you may be right, you may be wrong, but unless you try and give it a shot, you don't figure it out, you know. So,
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. So with that being said, you know, I think it's great what you're doing. I think like, so, you know, for everyone out there, you know, follow Fitze. He's doing a great job on, you know, hitting out lots of videos on, you know, anything from talking about the kind of equipment he uses all the way to just kind of stuff that we talk about on here, like creative ideas and things like that. So yeah, you're doing a good job, man. I think just keep doing what you're doing. I think, I think the only thing I would add that I've thought about but I haven't done is using things like Prezi and things like that to create kind of video presentations that you could send to clients. That's one thing that I've kind of watched a few YouTube videos on and stuff, and I haven't done it. I think it's an interesting idea. It's definitely good for web designers where you can actually walk through the website, and I could be like actually talking about things on the video as I'm walking through it.
Yeah, that is actually like an interesting part of about like getting clients and doing like you're talking about making a video presentation and how you would improve their thing and you post it under their name. I saw that actually for the company where I was like trying to so that I called and basically somebody was ripping apart the website and he uploaded that video onto YouTube and it's like, hey, if I were your web designer, I would do this and that, and he's just like ripping it apart publicly, and I'm like,
I actually had that happen once. I had a guy that did that to me once, and we tore him apart. And I actually even told him that if you don't take this down, we're going to send you like a whole cease and desist. And we did not give you permission to put so it got ugly. It was like that backfired in his face hard. We were like, what? Even the owner I was working under at the time was like, what? We're going to go to war against this guy if he wants to. He's going to post crap like this. It's like,
so I'm just like, I'm like, there's smart ways of doing it and bad ways of doing it.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do it.
Well, on the one side, I'm like, I agree with some of the points that he made, and I could have done that too, and basically don't highlight what they mess up, or basically what I could do for them and what they don't do, but I don't really show. It's like, when you talk about like, I forgot how you call it in English, but there's like when you had to talk to a king and you wanted to tell him he has a stupid idea and he's doing stupid shit, you come up with a type of story that is imaginable, and you use animals, and the lion did this, and so that you can associate yourself with the lion, and you mention the lion, but you mean the king.
Speak to him in metaphors. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so he thinks it's his idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's the whole idea of like, if you have something on your shirt, do you want me to come over and be like, hey, Fitz, you got crap all over your shirt? Hey, Fitz, hey, everybody, look at Fitz. He's got crap all over his shirt. It's like, you know what? That's how it goes. No, you actually don't. You look beautiful. But it's...
No, just found stuff. Thank you.
You have cats, so you'll always find stuff. But it's like that. Of like, don't do that to someone that's gonna be a prospect client where you like, you shout them out like, you could be doing this so much better. Hire me. It's like, what, dude? Like that's shots fired to a degree. It's like,
I mean, like some people like being dominated, and they like getting talked to down. I'm like, the chances are not really for you if you do that.
No,
it's a numbers game.
No, and it just reeks of desperation to me. I'm just like, what? So you don't make anything. You just go and critique people's crap all day and send them videos. I was like, I don't want to work with you. And and it's just so easy to critique. That's like the biggest thing any creative will tell you is it's the easiest thing in the world to critique something, but it's hard to actually make something. It's easy for me to sit here and be like, that sucks, your website sucks, but like, it's hard to actually make something better. Like, okay, just make it better. Like, don't do that. Don't post it. Post it in private. Give them a private video link. There you go.
Yeah, or maybe just like have like a little discussion and be like, this is what I would do, maybe wouldn't do. With that all being said, I maybe like it's not the thing even to do, because like I was like having the thought, because like on the one side I have that thought, we all choose the battles, and we laying the battles, or we choose the battles that we have, and we compare ourselves in a way that we win. You know, like if I compare myself to another videographer, I'm like, oh, I'm better at this, and I'm like, you know, he's not doing that. You know, and everybody does that. You know, we all pick our battles so that we look good when we win them. You know, and they probably don't pick the battles like, oh, I have the prettiest website or I have the best videos. You know, they maybe pick the battles of like, oh, we're making like $50,000 a month and we're doing great. You know, and then you're there with like maybe making 3,000 or 2,000 a month, and you're just like, yeah, your video game kind of sucks, you know. So you maybe should just approach it from a more neutral level and be like, yeah, I'm like, I want to help you. This maybe can help you. I'm not sure, but let's give it a shot. I'm very optimistic it would. But be more like, hey, what is important to you and how you can add value to that. That's the thought that I just had.
And recognize that all the things that have been done before you enter the picture is stuff that they had to work on. You don't know how hard the business owner worked on that. You don't know how much of a nightmare that video project maybe was. And so be careful. You could run right in and just tear apart all this stuff that they worked so hard on. And
it's maybe their favorite thing too. that's the other.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. You're right. It could be their favorite thing. It could be like their wife made it or something. You got to be very careful. You got to be very careful. I've had that happen where I'm like, yeah, your website kind of, and they're like, oh yeah, it's my wife. It's okay. It's okay, actually.
My daughter made that. How dare you?
Yeah. So it's like, so you got to be kind of careful. Like I always go into things like definitely looking for the good stuff, definitely sandwiching that feedback and being like, you know what? I see what you were trying to do here. And I actually think it was pretty intelligent. Now there's ways to do it better, but what you were going for, such a good idea. Like I've tried to like go in and like flatter them a little bit going in of like, you are smart. You're super smart. You're worthy. You're awesome. But we could be even better. Like, you know?
How? Sean, don't lie to me.
Well, it's like, you know what I always like. I don't know if you've ever watched anything like on any producers or anything, but music producers are really interesting, right? Because they have to have like a big personality come in, like a Tupac or a Kanye West or like a band like a Led Zeppelin or someone has to come in, and then they have to be like, you're cool, but I got to make your sound even better. You know what's going to make you even a little bit better is this. So it's really, we kind of do the same thing where we have to handle these personalities that's like, no, bro, I started my own tiling business years ago, and I own the whole west side of town with the tiling, and you got to be like, yeah, man, I get that. You're awesome.
I kind of want to...
Let's...
I'm kind of very curious about that because you said producer, and my wife is like a fan of a producer called Drew Falk, and he is producing all the metal bands that we like, and every song that he produces is a banger, you know, like they're all hitting the same style, and they're not like small bands, you know, and I'm just like, okay, they play a big role, but how do they deal with the bands and the personalities? That's like now where I'm like, yeah, what is your sales pitch? Like, yeah, make your shit even better. You know, like that. There needs to be like a approach because, like, if you're an artist or a professional, like I know plenty of like videographers who are full of themselves. You know, and they're like, oh, my shit is the best, and I work with X, Y, and Z, and you know, I'm like. And then they don't even have like 200 subs or whatever. It's crazy, but they work with the big clients, and it's like, but they're so full of themselves, and I'm just like. We all pick our battles so that we win, but I'm like, yes, here's to you, but that's not very relatable. But how do you transmit like to a person like that, like what you could offer to them to improve them? Because in their eyes, they're the shit.
Yeah. It's tough, right? I think it's got to get to this collaborative space, right? Someone that I like a lot, and I do want to go. I want to go through his book. I've been reading his book. Is Rick Rubin, the producer who famously worked with Johnny Cash, and NWA, all these famous rappers. He's like one of the most famous music producers of all time. And it's interesting when you hear him talk because the way he talks is it's not the way he says it's not my job to make the music, and it's not even the artist's job to make the music. It's our job to find it together. And so for him, he does these really weird exercises where he'll have people like do just weird spiritual exercises, him and the bands that he works with, to find what's right. And it's really an interesting thing because it's almost not even music related at all. It's almost just thought and really concepts and talking in these very conceptual things of how do we get to this place together. And I think what I love about that is like when our relationships go right, your best freelance experiences, that's what's happening is you're collaborating when you both are like, let's find it together. I'm not coming in being like, we need to do this and this, and they're not coming in, we need to do this and this. It's when we're both like, you don't know the answer, I don't know the answer. Let's find it together. Like, what is the answer here? And I think that's the most beautiful kind of dance, is when you're both working together.
Yeah, but if you have like egos, you know, that are really, really strong and powerful, and they may be being like not where they should be, and you know it, how do you make them having less input and you having the most input? You know, what can be very beneficial, you know, like there's especially like clients who are not very experienced and they just have a strong opinion. It's like me making the logo for the coffee mug with us on the thing, you know, not that experienced, but strong opinion, you know. And I'm like, oh, obviously I was like smart enough to go with your opinion, you know, because it's like, yeah, it's scalable, works when it's small, works when it's big, yada, 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 you know, and I believe in you. But it's like, if you have a client who is just like, no, my thing needs to be at least 50%. But if you would implement the 50%, it would not work and would hurt you. So how do you overcome that and overpower that? Because like on the one side, as a professional, you maybe should, or you just don't work with those people.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's such a great question. I'll definitely be very honest and say I don't do that all the time. I've had some client relationships recently. It's become very apparent that I haven't done that right, that I've allowed them to get to the 60% or the 70%, and I've given up space over time. Yeah. And so, but yeah, I would say the best way to do that is, and to do this not in a hard way, but in a light way, set up guardrails to be like, hey, like there is things that you do better than I do, right? And just like, and making sure to like highlight that, right? So if you have a client that does something and you're trying to get their voice, that what's out there, definitely make sure to highlight that they have knowledge too, that they know stuff too. But yeah, you have to create these guardrails around what you're doing, a little bit of like, see, I just told you you're the expert. Now you have to kind of also acknowledge I'm the expert, right? And you have to make sure that they're, and if they don't, and if you start to feel like they're not listening to that and they're not really, you really have to go somewhere else. And you have to kind of, and maybe even communicate that to them as like, for my brand to succeed and for me to succeed, I need to actually have this much buy-in from you. And right now I feel this resistance from you. And can we talk about it? And I've actually had that conversation. And sometimes that actually ends up working out with like, you know what? You're 100% right. You've been giving me all these ideas and I've been shooting them all down, and I really should be more open to it, because you just remind them like, hey, you hired me to do something, right? Like you hired me because I know something. So there's a point where you do need to listen to me about what I know, and I'll try to listen better about what you know. Because I think we make the same mistake too. I think a lot of creatives try to go into situations a little too gung-ho, where they're like, well, I understand the barbershop industry, or I understand the hardware industry, or the beer brewing industry, and it's like, yeah, but not as good as them. Like they sold the farm to do this. You didn't necessarily, you don't know everything they do either. So it's kind of making sure that that's apparent, I think.
Yeah. Like I learned about like a saying, like, you know, or I heard about it on a podcast, and the philosophy is basically like we all have a perception of reality, and reality is like actually not what we think it is, and it's so much more, you know. But we all have our own reality, and we think things work because of our experience, you know. Like if you have the experience, you did this and this and that, and you will get this outcome. But you don't actually know why you got this outcome. You assume it's because of all the X, Y, and Z's, but there's a couple other things like making you successful, you know? Like it could be like, could be colors, but you're focusing on fonts, you know? And you have just randomly like the right colors in the background, for example, and that makes you successful. But you don't really know what is actually the moving factor of success. So I'm trying nowadays to be like, I don't know anything what works or doesn't work, but I acknowledge that I have that bias, and I'm like, I embrace it, but I'm willing to adapt new things and test it, you know? Because like the testing part is the one thing where I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen, and I think it will not like shut me down if I try it, but you know?
Yeah, and I think that's great. I think having kind of an experimental type of view on things is great. You know, the caveat to that is, you know, new clients, like, so we're just talking about prospects and stuff like that, cold calls, they may be very resistant to tests if they don't know you, and experiments. So I would say be a little careful of that for people that like first reach out. But what I'd say is I love your approach, man, of like, let's let the data say stuff. I do the same thing too, where I tell people of like, hey, I'm okay if the data proves me wrong. Like that's a good thing. So if you have that attitude, people then kind of, it removes the ego. That's what's nice about it. If you can get to a scientific method, then people are like, okay, this isn't Fitz and his ego on how good he is as a creative, and he saw this one cool thing and now he wants to do it no matter what. He wants to do this one cool trick. It's like, so if you get it out of that space and you actually have reasoning, that's where it's awesome. Because in design, that's the biggest thing. Any really well-versed designer will tell you is that, the best designs have nothing that doesn't need to be there. Everything that's there has a reason to be there. And so experimenting is great. I think your approach is great, as long as you're careful in the beginning.
Yeah, so for me, it's like, there's also like, you need to have a playground where you experiment, For me, it's like, oh yeah, my personal stuff, experiments pure. I don't care. Problem is, though, clients will see me and expect that I will do that on them, But what I will do on them is like, no, what I learned, I will do for you. Not what I'm experimenting, I will do for you. You know what I mean? It's like, I will not go in there and just post a random experiment on their platform and be like, oh, I don't know if this is going to work, but if I would do that, I'll communicate at least and be like, hey, let us try this because it could work. Or would you like to have me experiment on myself? Because like that's usually what I'm doing. Like on YouTube, posted a live stream, cut it into a bunch of reels. Workflow is now 10 times faster. I'm like, oh, now I have audio issues. Now I know like I cannot do that with a client because like I maybe increase their output by 10 times, but if the audio is not dialed down, it will sound like garbage.
Yeah. Well, because what's interesting about the whole thing is that, you're like a technology company where you have an R&D department, right? A research and development department in your company. Yeah. And you should always be developing new stuff, right? It's like when you're playing like Factorio or some game like that, you have something in the background that's being developed or researched and getting better. So it's like, so it's really like you have this kind of column over here of stuff you're developing. They're new things, new processes that you're always trying to develop. So yeah, try it. And I'm exactly the same. Like I just try it on my stuff, try it on your internal stuff. A lot of ad agencies will do the same thing where they'll try a new tool in themselves first, get good at it, and then what you do is maybe if it's either something you're not confident with or it's going to cost a lot of money, maybe is you maybe give it away for free on the first go or two just to get some stories and stuff. That's a good way to transition
and
it.
Some feedback and.
Yeah, get your systems together, your own checklist, so you can definitively and very confidently talk about stuff rather than like, I got to get back to you on that. You actually know like the steps, and then you move that into the column of like now it's an offering, now it's a product. We've done the research and development. I've ran it through a few times. I've refined the workflow. Now it's a product, and now we're launching a whole new product.
Yeah, and I think like that is like one of the things, like experimentation and trying new things out. But it all comes back to like the clients will look from the outside in and be like, do I want to be associated to that? And you need the portfolio and you need to look approachable and good, So that's why we're doing that.
Yeah, we got to look safe, right? And looking like slick in a black shirt looks safe. It looks like this isn't some guy that just sleeps on his couch all day.
Bitcoin logo on it. Hey, absolutely not a rug pull.
A rug pull, I love that. But yeah, no, so I mean like, exactly. So self-branding everything, it all comes down to like make them feel safe, make them feel like this guy's going to take good care of me. And even in that first interaction when you're reaching out to prospects, I guess that's the challenge. How can you give someone a very comfortable, warm blanket around them from the very beginning? How can you do that?
Yeah. Well, that comes all back to like trial and error and experimenting. And that is like the thing. Oh, maybe before we end this podcast, Sean, how do you get hyped up for making that phone call? How you get to that meeting or meetup before you walk in? How you get hyped up? What is your wooza?
Sometimes I'm not hyped up. Sometimes I'm very nervous walking into things.
So it's just the pain is motivating you, and you're just like, I gotta do it, or I'm like getting screwed.
I mean, one strategy I've really tried to do recently is just the positive reinforcement at the very end of just saying, like, you're a great web designer, you have lots of clients, you have lots of friends, like Fitz is your friend, you know, you do things, you have a podcast, and just that kind of remind yourself of all the things, because I think I tend to, and I think people with social anxiety and stuff tend to focus on the things wrong with them and start to try to predict the future of how this event's going to go bad and stuff, and instead it's like just shoving stuff in my mind of like, you're a web designer. Look, you're doing the life that you wanted. You're zooming off to this networking thing after doing design work all day. Look how much of a badass you are, and just things like that. And music helps. Like, to hype yourself up with music in the car ride. I definitely tell people, have your cool music
that's
on,
what.
so, like, put the sunglasses on. Feel cool, man. Feel cool going in there. You know?
Sitting there with a cigar in his mouth, sunglasses, sitting. I don't need this cold call, but I'm gonna take it anyways. Hey, it's Fitz.
Hi. How's it going? Yeah, exactly. So,
sitting there.
How about you? Do you have any advice? You're good at social events. What hypes you up?
That is the weird thing, you know? Like, I'm getting excited if it's a fun thing, you know? And it all comes out of the mindset where you're currently in. And I'm, like, realizing I associated pain to the thing, and I should have not done that. I don't know why I did it, you know? I should have been excited, you know? Like, back in the day when I was a server, it's like, okay, you go to work, you make some money, you have to talk to a bunch of strangers, you don't really want to do it, you know? It's like, what if they roast me? What if they are, like, asking questions where I don't have answers for? Basically, you know, stuff like that. And the possibilities are endless. But you also can go in there, I'm going to work, and maybe make $300, you know? If I'm good and I get, like, all the big tables, I maybe make $500, you know? And that's, like, that's the mindset that you could have if you're, like, focused on the right thing. And I'm just like, yeah, the cold call. Why am I like upset about like making the call and it could go awkward? I mean, I should not care. I should focus on the upsides versus the downsides, you know, and don't make it painful in my head. And I'm like, I somehow slipped into it, not realizing it. And obviously, we all are humans and not machines. So the 1 week we have this mindset, the other week we have that mindset, and we did not even realize we changed mindsets without knowing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's. Yeah,
because like after thinking about it, no, I'm stoked. Let's do it. Let's go.
Yeah, well, it's like balancing. It's like balancing like the fear of the unknown with the excitement of the unknown too, right? It's like because you could. There's this old timey statement of like dress like you're gonna meet your wife tonight or something like that. I forgot what it is. I just butchered it, but it's like dress like you're gonna meet your wife. Like tonight's the night, like because you don't know. You could walk into this thing, and so like dress like you, because like you could go to this event and you could literally find a client that's going to change your life forever. You could walk in and in 5 months because that one walk-in thing, you're now fucking like swimming in money, and you have a brand new car and you're about to buy a new house. Like things can change that rapidly just by meeting the right person at the right time and getting tied up in someone else's world. So it's like if you're going to be like, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to pour my drink all down my front, everyone's going to laugh at me, everyone's going to be like, Sean doesn't belong here because he's an imposter, then you also need to over here be like, but I could also walk in and everyone's like, give me your card, I'm going to give you business tomorrow, I like your style, kid, and stuff like that. And so it's like if you're going to be, because us as creatives are really good at coming up with creative fictional stories, right? So that's when it can get out of hand, is before an event, because we're using our creativity against ourselves. It's like cutting but with creativity. We're just like, but let's create new fictional ways of how this is going to be terrible. And it's like, no, like if you're going to do it, then balance it, because it could be amazing too. I mean, it could be awesome.
Yeah, and I'm like, you're completely right with that. And it's just like, as a human being, we're meant to be in nature, and we have to think about like thinking negatively to survive. You know, like what if there's a tiger? There could be a tiger there. You know, it could eat us. You know, and that is actually the only bad thing that really could happen. Nowadays, you maybe get like into a lawsuit, you maybe go into jail, but you're not getting eaten, you know? Very unlikely. Yeah, so it's like all your fears, you know, are like irrelevant. As long as you do like things by the book, you should be 100% fine, you know? Unless you have very, very bad luck and you're at the wrong time at the wrong place, but that's so rare, you know, nowadays.
Yeah. And 100%, and it's just, it's just remove the ego. It comes back to that. If you don't care about your ego being bruised, then there's nothing that can harm you in these types of situations. Because you're right. There's no tiger that's going to jump on you at the bar. There's, things can happen in the world. Obviously, you could have the car wreck or something bad happen. But
Yeah.
going to these things, it's very low risk. And I always tell myself this. It's funny. It took so long as an adult. I think it was like in my mid-20s to finally realize the whole idea of you can leave if you just go. Like if you hate it in 30 minutes to an hour, just leave. You don't like what's this whole like you're going to be there all night or something. Just go.
I was just imagining on a cold call, he's asking a question. I don't like this answer.
Yeah, and as an Irishman, let me tell you, the
Theoretically.
Irish exit's the best. The Irish exit's the best. I do it at parties too. I'll do the Irish exit where I'm just like, peace. I ain't gonna go say bye to everybody. But
Yeah.
so I like so I would say that to everyone too. Is like and even with the cold call thing, what's the worst that can happen? They could just say I'm not interested, right? I mean, it's not. It's
Yeah.
not like you're knocking on doors, every single door in a neighborhood or something, and someone's going to come out with a shotgun. It's like no, you're just calling. Like there's nothing bad that'll happen.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Besides that, I think this was a really good podcast, and I'm very excited. Like for everybody listening, rate this podcast 5 stars or whatever you think it should be, because like we're a little bit like just ourselves, but as a creative, 5 stars, and as everybody else, less.
Yeah. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube's. Go to our website. Send us messages. We love you guys. And
Yeah,
great
buy all the mugs. Peace.
Buy all the mugs. Peace.